Hello, there you are. How's it
Oh yeah,
going?
yeah. I'm well. Thank you
Awesome. Good to have you on the show.
for having me.
Too bad this is virtual, so virtual hug, but we'll make up
Absolutely,
for that whenever I see you next.
I'm sure.
Okay, guys, quickly gonna jump into introduction. So, welcome everyone. My name is Vibha Kagzi, and I am the founder and chief education officer at Reach Ivy. At Reach Ivy, we help you with your study abroad and career aspirations. And very much in line with that thought, we started this show called The House of Experts, where we bring in experts very much like Shehzeen every week to your telephone screen so that you can learn from the life journeys of someone else and hopefully not make the mistakes they made and get a little dose of inspiration every weekend. And Shazeen promises to be a lot of inspiration. Personally, I'm super inspired by her story and her journey. So, without much ado, I'm going to jump into introducing Shahzeen. So, Shahzeen actually is someone who we went to the same school. So, she's also a fellow JBite and is obviously a pioneer of flamenco here in India. She's got many accolades to her credit, starting with her intense training in Spain. For over 14 years, she trained, back and forth between Spain and India, and even now she shuttles between Sevilla and Bombay. She has an academy to her credit, so she runs what she calls the SCFA, the Shehzeen Cassum Flamenco Academy, wherein she trains students. In fact, it's the only accredited flamenco institute here in India, and she uses her academy as a platform to also invite artists to Bombay and other cities across India. And I had the pleasure of being at the performance, Shazin, you did in Bandra once. Came to your show in Kala Ghoda, that lovely venue once. So it's just absolutely amazing for anyone who has not been able to attend one of Shazin's performances. As soon as this lockdown is over, please make sure you get to experience one of those because it's an experience that lasts not just for the day or the evening or the weekend. It sort of transcends sort of into your life. So you must make sure you experience that once. She also runs what she calls the Nemesta Flamenco Festival, which I think you kickstarted in 2020. And it's essentially India's one and only flamenco festival. So the entire festival dedicated only to flamenco. So clearly, Shazeen literally sleeps, dreams, breathes, and eats flamenco. And we're really excited to hear all about this journey and this dance form. So thank you, Shazeen. Do you want to say something to kickstart?
No, thank you so much, Vibha, for having me. It's such a pleasure to see you do these lives, and I'm just really happy to be part of a conversation that expands options to people, career planning and looking at their life, because I feel like we live in the most exciting time, or where there just absolutely there's no limit. The sky's the limit, and basically you can just make your own path, and it can work, and you can kind of live your dreams. So thank you so much for having these conversations. It's a pleasure to be.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shazeen. So, as you know, since we run an educational organization, my first question to all my guests is always education related. So, if you could sort of flash back to your childhood and, walk us through the educational journey and
Sure,
just, insights into
sure.
your early years. Yep. Okay.
Absolutely. So I would just have to say that I've always maintained like a bifurcated life. One is academic and one has been dance. My entire life, these are the two trajectories that have always just been alive and very much connected. And they've both been influenced by two very pivotal Parsis, Tushna Dallas, or the pioneer of ballet in India, and her daughter Kushahar Dallas, and our school principal, Ms. Shirinder Shah. So whether it's been dance or academic, I've just always had a very strong role model leading and setting an example, and always kind of asking for a standard of excellence that I feel like I don't know how to live without now that I function and I teach, and I'm trying to do for flamenco what Tishna did for ballet. So from the age of 4.5, I auditioned to be part of a ballet school. So it was
Oh,
always
wow.
very serious.
Oh,
Like it's never just like a casual hobby or something I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays or something like that. It's always been 4.5, 5, and that's where it started very
wow.
seriously. And I was in JB Petit, art school, and that's pretty much my primary education. And as I proceeded, even in my early years, I still remember like taking a month off from school in the fifth standard, sixth standard to go and train at the Royal Academy of Dance for classical ballet in the UK, which is a premier institute. Again, had to audition to get there, to get selected, one of the 5, 6 people in our country going. So it was always like, you know, it was as important as academics for me from the very beginning. It wasn't just something that I did on the
But
side.
at 4.5, how did that happen? Like, what you come from? You come from a family of
At 4.5, you
dancers, like
just audition to be part of the school, and there are
okay,
several grade examinations that you go up from pre-primary, primary grade 1 to, well, forever. And at somewhere along the way, once you're ready, you can go and train at the Royal Academy of Dance. You give all your dance examinations, RAD, ISTD, whatever. And yeah, so it's always been a very academic dance life from the very start, alongside school and you know, the regular things
and
that
were you a
happen.
good student at school, or was the dance
Yes,
taking over your
no,
academic
no,
life? No,
I'm a
okay.
big nerd. In fact, I wasn't planning on saying this so early, but yeah, I was all set to do medicine, and then eventually I gave up dentistry, thinking I'd like to dance. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
a big science nerd, but I
Oh,
just prefer to dance, and it's taken me so many years to clarify this to myself. So
so you
that's
had the
more or less.
grades to go to medical school? Yes. Oh
I
wow.
taught HSC science in Jai Hind in
Oh my God.
2003. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow. But there's some parents who are watching this chat, and just for
Yeah.
them, like how, if they want to inculcate the arts in their children at such an early age. You said at 4.5, you
Yeah.
started auditioning. How did
Right.
that happen? You feel like your parents influenced this in some way? Do you come from a family of dancers? Like,
Yes, yes.
okay.
My mom is also a student of Tishna Dallas, and my parents are both heavily into the performing arts. My mom sings, my dad's a percussionist,
Oh,
played jazz, drums, and then eventually now Indian classical tabla. But yes, it's always been a pretty strong aspect. My grandfather's a big supporter of qawwalis and Sufi performers. Everybody's always kind of come through our house. We've always
oh,
hosted these kind of programs all throughout my childhood. This is what I've seen. I never really took to Indian classical music or dance, and I tried a bunch of things. My mom was very like, try this and try that and go for this, and I still was able to manage school and have a life and go down and play every day in the evening. So I didn't really have a very different childhood, but I definitely explored. And I think that's why I like to test everything out in real time before I commit, because I don't like the regret, and I also like to know that I explored everything before I chose. So
okay. So the journey starts with ballet, and
yes.
along the way it transitions to flamenco. So how does that happen?
So for about over a decade, about 11, 12 years, I was really into ballet, and I had a couple of crossings with flamenco artists, because my mom and my ballet teacher both always encouraged me to go to the NCPA, and I was a member as a student, and because of my extracurricular love for the performing arts. So I kept watching artists, taking residencies, workshops. I kept seeing things, and then Tushna used to bring down artists across the Western classical dance forms, and give us that level of expanded exposure to
Hmm.
other platforms to kind of increase our latitudinal thinking
Sure.
within dance. So I had a couple of crossings with flamenco. I will admit I never really liked it initially, and I feel like it is always the environment and the artist that can inspire you or not. And
Hmm.
I had a similar crossing somewhere when I was 16 with an artist that I watched at the NCPA, and I met her, and she was doing a residency after. And then she mentioned that, oh, by the way, there's an amazing festival in Jerez, which is the birthplace of flamenco in the south of Spain. You should come. And I was all set to leave for university at that time. And this is also, I took a gap year somewhere in the middle of that as well, when I decided I don't want to do medicine or dentistry, etc. And that's kind of where I found flamenco. And she said, you should come to Spain. And that's what I did for my first spring break. I
Oh
actually
wow.
have no concept of spring break, because there's always been a flamenco festival for me. And the dates have always lined up. It's just kind of been this poetic thing that just happened. And and I went to the birthplace called Jerez de la Frontera. It's in the south of Spain, an amazing, like very cool antique town, cobbled streets that aren't even wide enough for a car at times. And
Wow.
I was amazed, and that's kind of, it blew my mind. And I was like, who are these people and what is this life? And I was like, I want in. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. I felt like I'm made for this, and my body responded so well, like my arm movements, my posture. I just felt like I was built to do this, and my expression just became so natural. I never spoke a word of Spanish when I went.
Oh,
Not even, okay, I said gracias,
wow.
to the extent of my vocabulary. And in fact, the artist that said, by the way, you should come, I'll be there. There's thousands of other artists from all over the world that come, that perform, that teach, that do workshops, and it's just you live, breathe, eat flamenco for 2 weeks. And I was like, great, I'll see you there. And I went completely on a limb without the knowledge of my parents, because they didn't really think I was up to traveling halfway across the world, even after I'd gone to university and I was
Sure.
halfway across the world. And I went there and she's like, I'm really sorry, I got a gig in India at the Piramal wedding. And I was like,
Oh
are
my
you kidding
God.
me? I don't know anybody in Spain. I'm here, I don't know how to speak the language, and I'm here for my first festival. And that's kind of where it really began for me. And I was heavily inspired after that. And that's kind of the turning
That was
point.
your pivot point. Okay. So it sounds like lots of early exposure. You come from this family that sort of appreciates music, the performing arts, the NCPA membership, then your early induction with Trisha, and then literally being open-minded, right? Like you just sort of on a whim went away to that festival. So just sort of keeping your mind open to diverse experiences, and then that pivot point happens. Okay. Um, what happened to your career choices along the way? So you said you thought you were doing well in school, medicine,
Yeah.
then you dropped out. Then what happens?
So I finished JB Pettit, and then I went to Jai Hind because I love science. I've always loved science. I'm a big chemistry nerd. I think anybody who knows me well will know that. And I was like all set to do science, and I loved it. I loved it. I excelled. It was superb. I was so sad at the end of my exam. I was like, now what? It's like finishing a good book. It's like, now I don't have anything. And then I sort of not very consciously got ushered into this medical rat race. It's either medicine or engineering, and I was like, kind of like science, so let's see where this goes. And I somehow, without trying, and I went and streaked my hair before the medical CET. I was not at all interested in being a doctor or a dentist. Everyone was just like, try it. You never know. You never know. I was like, I love science, but this isn't for me. And I didn't want to give my exam. I was not serious at all about the medical entrance. And I somehow, without trying, got into a bunch of colleges in Bombay. Again, was not really looking for it, and it happened. And then my parents were like, well, now just try a college, And I was like, I don't think this is me, but I went forward. I went to BY Patra. I did some time there, and I was all set. But I think after JB, what I craved was a really good educational environment and
Hmm.
inspirational teachers. And I just felt like that's not here. It wasn't in Jai Hind either. And I was just craving to be inspired again. And I love the subjects, I love the content, but I just, something was missing. And then I was like, this is not what I want to do. And then I jumped. I did a few weeks of biotechnology. I jumped to a microbiology course.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
went to Saviors. I went to Jai Hind. I mean, I literally tried
Okay.
everything that I
So
could think of.
lots of
Yes,
chaos.
a bunch of other medical colleges in the suburbs, and I was just like, no, this is really not what I want to do.
Okay.
And that's when I found flamenco, and I decided to take a gap year and consider my options. And then I gave my SATs. I applied to go abroad to the States, and I got into a bunch of universities, and I was mostly considering between Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown, and UVA.
And we would have been
And
alumni twice over. Imagine that. Wow.
And I picked UVA because design has always been a huge part. My dad's an architect. Everybody in my family is a designer. So initially when medicine came up, everyone was like, are you sure? Because you come from a creative background. Because there are no
Yeah.
doctors in the family. So
So did you finish your degree at UVA?
yes, of course.
Okay.
I went, I did architectural design and photography. That's what I'm professionally trained in. And I came back and I practiced in India as well. And I used to teach on the weekends.
Okay.
And And
So
then at some point,
when did that flip happen? When did you say that, okay, I'm going to make dance my
I
primary?
came back and I was working with Pilati and Pantaki, and I did a bunch of other creative pursuits. I used to do a bit of graphic design as a hobby on the side, as a side income. I used to do photography gigs, architecture photography gigs, because that's what I was trained in. And then I used to do full-blown design projects as well, mostly luxury villas, boutiques, vintage bungalows, things
Okay.
like that, and spas. That was my niche. And I used to teach on the weekends. I found my first studio, and within 6 to 7 months, don't ask me how, I got a gig at Kalagur, I got a gig at NCPA, and then I was like, I'm dancing, maybe I should teach. And people used to come backstage at my performances and being like, my daughter wants to learn with you, like, where's your studio? And I'm just like, I only perform, I'm just an artist,
Okay. So it sort of
and
happened
that
organically as you
very
stayed.
organically.
Okay. Okay.
And then, yeah, at some point the equation just flipped, and now I design as a hobby in my free time around my dance career. So
Okay. So the dance is now the primary one, of course. Okay.
kind of
And
always.
what have the parents got to say about all this? Like how have they sort of accepted this? Was there any friction? What's the
Yeah,
story
okay.
there?
So my parents have never really like been in too involved beyond exposure. I mean, they've always kind of been like, look at all of this and then now figure it out on your own. And I think after I decided to take my gap year, there was definitely like, everybody was worried, there was tension, but I knew that I'm on my path, and this is not what I'm gonna regret. So I just
Sure.
went forward, and my parents were very supportive through the year, and I gave my SATs, and I even applied to some architectural colleges in India, and I got A's in my elementary and intermediate art exams,
Yeah.
so that helped. But eventually I just let go of all of that for the need to find a better educational institute, and then that's what happened. But they were very supportive throughout,
Okay.
and initially they didn't know of my escapades to Spain, because they were like, no, you can just go to Mexico if you want to go for spring break, like don't go to
Right.
Spain because that's too far. And then I got a job as a software consultant. I teach design softwares to faculty and students, and work in a digital media lab. And that was the highest paying job on campus, and it allowed me to sustain my own training throughout. Initially, it was private, and then my fourth year, I invited my father to come for this same festival. He very grudgingly came, very, very grudgingly came, almost missed his flight. And we went, so basically during the day, there's loads of events like that go on. And in the night, the best artists, flamenco artists from the world come down and perform in these 4 or 5 beautiful opera theaters. And everybody's just mostly scuttling between them. And in the day, you can interact with these artists, learn from them, and have very close interactions, which are supremely inspirational. So my dad, in the first day, after the first big show, 9 o'clock opera show, he was like, I understand. I
Ah,
understand now. So that's
okay.
kind of when he got it. My mom always obviously got it because she's also
She's a
was
yeah.
a dancer, and yeah, she was the one who pushed me to do this. So
Okay. So it seems like the whole experiential element has been big. Like you went there, you experienced it, and then sort of transition, and
yeah.
you wanted your dad to see and sort of okay. Awesome, cool. You spoke about the fact that you didn't speak, a word of Spanish, and then you started this crazy training phase of your life. So I have a question here from Uf Mirchi who says, can you talk about, your experience in Spain and some of the difficulties you faced during that phase?
Gladly. Okay, so basically, I think the first barrier was language for me, and the first few years, I became an excellent mime artist because I knew like 3 or 4 words every year. I would just very much slowly expand my vocabulary and then make sign language. And then after a point, I was just like, okay, now I'm here. I've graduated. I've come back. I'm here. I'm staying here for 4 months. I think it's time for me to learn the language, and I really began to make an effort. I went and enrolled myself in a language academy there, and then back here, and then I did all my language training
Levels.
simultaneously, and it opened it up for me. Now I can speak like a native, and it helped a lot. And in general, I think, even when I was living there, I'm usually there for 3 to 4 months a year. for the festival or the Biennale or something or some aspect. And, you know, things like learning how to use a washing machine, like reading instructions in Spanish, all of that very much helped my language aspirations and helped me move. But it was challenging, and, you know, there were small things, but I had to like learn them on the fly. And those were mostly life things.
Language,
But
yeah.
in terms of the arts, like I am the only Indian there. Like there's nobody else from India, unless it's now my students that I take with me, or students that I've encouraged to go for my own academy. So my face looks a bit gypsy. I look like I'm there when I'm in costume. I look like I'm
Local, yeah.
from there. And so people look at my face and then just immediately like, blah, and I'm just like, I don't speak, or hablo muy poco, or something like that. And slowly, like I got around into breaking my way into the community of artists that live there, and I finally got my first show. And many times, the community is a bit like, you know, you have to work and you have to actually prove yourself to get a gig. And then once you get a gig, getting musicians to play with you, being an extranjera or foreigner, is also a challenge. So I actually had 2 musicians cancel on me on my first gig, which I was anyways so scared to do, because the level is here. I'm not from Spain at all, even though I may look like it a bit. But and you know, till my last week, and my heart was outside my body trying to find a musician who, you know, who would accept the gig and like sing for me or play guitar for me. And eventually I did find some great people, and it was exceptional. But I mean, the level of stress was incredible for me at some points along the way, and also great learning experiences. These same musicians now have come for my first Flamenco festival and played here live and done shows. So it's a cycle, but I guess you really have to like be very persistent to break through.
Okay, so persistence, language, fitting in some way, lots of challenges. Not been an easy journey for you, but having done that, right? So you went through this like journey as a student, and now you're sort of second phase going through this journey as an academic, like a teacher. What are sort of like the fundamentals in flamenco training? Yeah, what is flamenco dance about? And if you had to sort of simplify it for people listening, what are some of the base level elements? And what do
Cool.
you really need to do, like as a student or as a teacher? You know, what are some of the characteristics that one must have to be a successful trainer, teacher,
Cool.
dancer? You know, all of that. Okay.
Awesome. So flamenco is basically made up of 4 ingredients. If it's a recipe, it has 4 ingredients. There's cante, which is singing, which is raw vocals. That's how flamenco began. It was just literally singing. And then at some point, the element of guitar or toque was added to it. And much later, the element of baile or dance came in, and percussion or tal. So it's singing, dancing, guitar work, and then a hand
The rhythm.
percussion that
So
maintains the rhythm.
are you saying you learn all 4? You start your training with the
I'm just
singing element?
gonna get into that. So
Okay.
usually people pick one because they're very deep disciplines. And you said like I'm in a second phase of being a teacher. I'm very much a student after 15, 16 years of doing this, 10, 12 years of ballet. I consider myself 0 every single day. I never, ever consider myself like I know enough. Never, never. It's like the worst attitude to have in flamenco, because it is the most humbling art form ever. Don't take my word for it, but if you just go there, it's a lifelong learning. Just one of the elements, you can dedicate your entire life and still not know everything about Ganidar. So usually people pick one. I obviously mine is dance, but I also have been training in singing and in percussion for a long, like about 7, 8 years. Like I started branching out, and that helped me. It helps me today to teach better, to direct better, to communicate better, to choreograph, to produce productions, to work with artists, to explain what I want, you know, in terms of vision. And I also transmit that to my students by teaching them singing and percussion alongside dancing, not with the same focus, but it's very, very useful to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because it's not just a dance form, it's an art form. So if you have that tunnel vision, and that's what I recommend to anybody studying, not with me, wherever you are, that learning some aspect outside your main focus will completely transform the way that you think and express yourself within your chosen medium.
Okay.
So that's what I would tell anybody, artist, student, whoever, like, doesn't matter.
Okay. So you sort of pick one forte, and then you made sure you had some orientation, some training in the other elements as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's helpful. Then what happens? So what are the other elements of this form?
That's it. And then there's you train as a student, and then once you're ready, after some years, you perform, and that's pretty much it. And the perform also, this is an art form that's been developed in southern Spain by gypsies. That is like several hundred centuries ago. They originated, or at least their path can be traced back to Rajasthan amongst other areas. So maybe that's why we look similar. I don't know, but there are some excellent overlaps, cultural confluences that you can still identify if you know both sides. And like certain tals in our music and in Indian classical music are the same. Like teen tal is the same, but ek tal is totally different. So, I mean, these are some great things to see, being an Indian and being able to explore fusion in, it's very fun. It's an excellent journey. And fusion is definitely not, even though it's very fun for an artist, it's not everything in terms of the art form. The art form is so heavy, so robust, so potent, that there are times where I feel, even though I do a lot of fusion work, it's hardly comparable, you know, to the actual thing. And that's actually what I'm super interested in spreading awareness about, either through my academy or through my dance company or through the festival. So these are three channels of diffusion. But the pure aspect, which we call flamenco puro, that is the understanding of that. But I don't want any loss in translation as I bring it here, because I feel like I have a lot of responsibility being the pioneer, the ambassador in our country to spread this art form. I need to do it really well, so that people maybe don't watch a Bollywood film and think that's flamenco, because usually it's... So,
okay, great. So you want to keep sort of like the authenticity and the purity of that dance form
very much so.
Okay. I have a quick question here from Surbhi Samdani, who asks, what inspired you to opt for flamenco? I think you touched upon this a little bit in the beginning, but like, you know, given the training in ballet, and of course, in India, we have so many amazing classical dance forms, right? And that similarity between Kathak and flamenco that we all talk about. So why opt for, you know, a dance that's not native to our country, where you have access to amazing Kathak dancers literally at, you know, at your doorstep? So what about flamenco is it that really got you, other than that amazing trip to Spain?
So actually, it's not something about it that caught me. I'm not even aware at some point. I just feel like many times it's the art form that chooses you. I don't really feel like I made like this choice towards it. I always loved ballet, always loved dance. I didn't take to Indian classical dance because it just didn't call me. But something in flamenco just came and like, takes over you, mind, body, and spirit. Many people describe it as the flamenco bug. You know, it's like COVID, you got it. And it's just, that's how it spreads. If you speak to anybody in a flamenco festival, I mean, there are 5,000-10,000 people that come from all over the world. They all have the bug. It's something that I can't really explain. But even if you see the people that come to the academy to dance, and they're so different as people, but they all have this. And they're all like, you know, and it touches them. So I feel like besides that, there's something that is higher than what I can explain, and that's pretty much it.
So, fair enough. That answer was well accepted. So, you know, you said the sort of bug catches you, you know, it's flamenco. You said you're going to leave the medical school. You're going to not, you know, really focus so much on your architecture and design. How do you make a living out of this, right? Like I see this with a lot of artists. I have lots of friends who are artists, and they're constantly struggling with money. So can you sort of, you know, just sort of address that elephant in the room?
Yes,
like how do you as an artist make money?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say for me, there are two main sources of income. One is through teaching and one is through performing. And that's always it. Take a class, book a show, and that's kind of how we promote. But in general, many parents are kind of worried that their kids go into a creative field and won't get paid well, and it's not sustainable. There's not a constant source of income, etc. But I feel like, there's a level of uncertainty with every single profession. And I feel like through this pandemic, it's very, very clear that our life, or the equilibrium of our life, is very precarious. So there are a couple of things that I personally like to look at, about 4 steps. So one is to identify like something that you're good at, something that you're passionate about, and something that you're talented at. So if you're actually, it's not just liking something or doing something.
You have to have the ability. Yeah. So interest,
are you really good at it? And once you have that, actually showing up consistently every day and just, this is it, I've committed. There's no other second option that I can fall back on. This is my thing. And I show up, whether I have 3 students or 300, doesn't matter.
So the commitment, okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the third thing, adapting, being able to adapt to changes. I think the easiest adaptation example I can say is, we lost our studio in Bombay. I'm no longer teaching in the various other studios in India where I've been invited to regularly come and give workshops. So a physical space is no longer, a possibility. Right. So we've had to actually transition the entire academy and teaching online. Everything online on Zoom with a sound lag. And within music and dance, dealing with the sound lag is super, super difficult. But I feel like the ability to adapt to whatever and be relevant in a changing time is super important, an ability.
So you said ability, interest, commitment, adaptation.
Yes, and then eventually I feel like if you've committed and you're showing up and it's there for a couple of years, you're bound to make money if you're good, you're committed, you're passionate. And once you do, it actually doesn't stop there. I would like to say investing that money and educating yourself on financial investments, instruments is super important so that you can allow all your hard work that's translated into some amount of money to make money for you so that you can focus back on your art. And that's circle. Because I feel like there are many times that, you scale and then you're not investing or you're not thinking about it once you've earned money, and it could really free up a lot of space for you. And I'll just share a quick anecdote. My grandfather is a very regular investor, and at some point, being around him, watching him have his financial advisor come home every 3 weeks and do a meeting, and then I was just be sitting there, it affected me. And then he's like, what are you doing? You're in the 12th standard. What's your portfolio like? And I was like, what's portfolio? I didn't know. And I started early, and that's always given me, the ability yes, I'm fine. So I feel like whatever you do, and there's a lot of money, and I feel like any field, if you have all these criteria and you're serious about investing, I don't really see any kind of fear, uncertainty, or doubt creeping in if you've kind of managed all these aspects well.
Okay, cool. Thanks for addressing that. And I see the sort of, this conviction and this blind faith in many, many artists. And I think that's really what sort of sets you apart from us boring business people. Going to take a quick question here from Karthik Shirpurkar, who I know is a good friend of yours. And of course, he's an amazing musician himself. So Karthik says, sometimes I really feel like joining your dance workshops to understand it more. I have only one question. When can I get a chance to jam with you and learn while jamming with you?
Okay, as soon as this lockdown gets over and it's free to me, I promise you I will reach out. But at the same time, the reason I actually have launched a new non-dance course since the transition online, I teach a Cante and Palmas course for musicians and dancers specifically to understand. I think this is a great possible introduction to kind of connect with me, because if you're not a musician, if you're not a dancer, it doesn't make sense to come for a dance class. And I feel maybe, coming for Cante or Palmas or singing and rhythm classes, which are available online to anybody anywhere in the world. We have people from Sweden, the US, crazy time zones attending. So I'm sure you can do that. And I'd be very happy to jam with you after this opens up.
Okay, great. So where can people find information to your classes? Is it all on your Insta page?
I'm so sorry. I'm so
No
sorry.
problem.
Back there. Yes, if you go to my Instagram page, everything is there. Every month we have a new set of courses, usually 4 weeks long or a month long, and then they keep cycling. Some are connected, some are not. So every month you'll have an opportunity to take classes online from the comfort of your home. And not only that, we've subsidized our rates a lot, given the current financial situation and everybody's limitations. So they are very accessible, and you can do them at home.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a question here from Abel who asks, what is the scope of dance in India? And I'm presuming he means like, again, just in terms of the market and the market opportunity, like, is this something you're seeing as like, is it a big enough addressable market?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a pretty big market. Also, marketing yourself well is extremely important. But there is definite scope for new things within dance, music. Fusion has a huge market as well. And generally, things that are not seen before, I feel somehow flamenco appeals to Indian audiences. I don't know if it's because of the gypsy migration. We have these crazy origins that connect us to this culture. I have no idea. But basically, whichever city I've ever performed in, whichever festival, audience, small, big, everything, it's just always been so positive. Like, I see everybody kind of absolutely engrossed in flamenco and like responding really well. And there is huge scope. I feel I can't really say within the pandemic right now,
Sure.
but in general, yes, there is a lot of.
Okay. So I have this question I always like asking, all the artists who come on the show. What goes on in your mind when you're on stage? What's going on in that mind of yours when you're performing? What are you thinking? Are you sort of looking at the audience? Is the audience even in consideration? Are you just sort of lost in your art? Like, what is the process like? What is the mental space?
Okay, so there's always the question of being stage shy or being nervous or anything. I've never really had it. I never liked speaking initially as a child, but dancing has never been an. I just go there and I do my thing and never really look at the audience. It's not because I'm not trying to look. The second you dance, I feel like I am transported or I go inward. So it's kind of blurry for me and it's never been distracting, but there are times, for example, in flamenco, audience energy is a big deal because similar to maybe in a Qawwali or Sufi environment where you say "Kya baat hai,"
Yeah.
we say "Ole." So that's and we say various other phrases, same sentiment, different language, but there is a lot of back and forth of energy, and I love that. If I do come out of my trance and I see it, I definitely respond to it, and it takes me to a different plane. But at the end of the day, it's very still inside my mind when I go on stage. Everything's outside. It's my time, and this is what I love doing most, because at the end of the day, a painter will still have like a canvas to show that this is what I worked on. We actually just have that ephemeral moment. You have to be in that second, because if you're not, you miss it. So I feel like it's super important for me to still myself, and I go in and I enjoy it, and that's kind of what I live for.
Okay, so it's a very sort of in that moment.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing. Quick question here from Gypsy Soul Dance, who says, how do you manage when you're interested in multiple dances? Okay, so I think he's saying like if someone wants to learn multiple dance forms, how do you recommend someone does that, considering there's so much depth in each dance form? Do you recommend cross training across several dance forms or just sticking to one?
It's a very personal case by case thing, because for me, I mean, I've had gurus that have very strong opinions on this. For example, my ballet teacher never allowed me to do gymnastics ever because it molds my posture differently. And you would find that if I have a Kathak dancer in my class today, they pick up the footwork like that. But their upper body is so conditioned to Kathak posture, Kathak movements that it's a struggle for them to get through them. So, I mean, there are pros, there are cons. If you pick related things, that's good. For example, Akshay Gypsy Soul is a student. So I know that you're into belly dance and flamenco, Kathak. Yes, there is flow, there is connect, there are overlaps, and that's great. But I think it's always very important to be sure that you're molding yourself in a primary form that you're happy about. If that makes sense. So you need to be really conscious of that in general. That's what I would say. It's not like you can't, you can. I mean, sky's the limit, but make sure that you change the SIM card when you change the class, because if you're not conscious of it, stuff will creep in and it'll affect your performance, impact, and intention for sure.
Okay, wow, that's super interesting. Actually, I didn't even think of it in that sense. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Quick question here from Jan209. People in India are influenced by Bollywood a lot. Can you address that? People sometimes don't learn the dance form with culture it comes from. Okay, basically people just want to dance for Bollywood and are not really focused on the art. So any comments on that?
I have very strong opinions on this, which I can definitely address in class, Janvi, but let's be politically correct. Bollywood is Bollywood. It's fun, right? We do it for some reason. And yes, movies, and I would not even say just Bollywood, but even Hollywood does not respect performing arts with credibility and authenticity. So if you look at Meet the Focus, there's somebody doing the flamenco and they do this, and it's odd. Okay, but that's just how cinema is. I would never look to cinema or Bollywood for purity in a performing art, which is art. It's arts and entertainment, and if you can find the bifurcation to distinguish that, I think you should have no problem enjoying both sides. Go to pure source for inspiration, and
go to Bollywood for entertainment. I think that's fine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like you don't mix them, because they actually are like oil and water. And I also say there is a whole generation of amazing artists, because we do live in this very cool flux of social media, and people with small businesses, strong voices, good training are actually coming to the surface and saying, this is what kizomba is, this is what salsa is, this is what flamenco is, this is what kathak is. So support small great people doing this. There are a lot of people who will sell out and become commercial, and there are a lot of people who won't. So I feel like you should have the intelligence to distinguish and follow a path that makes sense for you.
Okay, so of course, you're saying, for authenticity, go to an authentic teacher. And of course, I mean, the benefit of Bollywood and stuff is, while, obviously they don't maintain the authenticity, they're at least capable of popularizing and sort of,
Yes, definitely.
There is some upside to it. I mean,
there's always an upside. Like the film Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara definitely did get on the map for so many people who just were not familiar with Spanish culture. And maybe Tomatina was more, fascinating than flamenco. But it's not like that rendition of flamenco was really authentic either.
Right.
But whatever. I mean, there is some help, and we'll take that.
So you take that, exactly. Okay, great. I'll take a quick question here from Pallavi Mehta, who says, how lovely to see you here. How can others, apart from your students, know about authentic flamenco, apart from learning from you, of course? So are there any other channels or sort of, mediums for people to learn more about the form?
Hell yeah, YouTube. It is the biggest medium ever. And in general, since the pandemic, we've started something which is absolutely free for the community, for education, for dissemination of flamenco and knowledge around the pureness of the art form. I've started an initiative called Dance Dialogues, where I invite flamenco artists from all over the globe that I've worked with to come and talk about an actual relevant theme related to dance that most people don't address. So authenticity is always at the very core of what we do. This is free, it's open, happens once a month. We've started it 3 months ago. So definitely, if you don't know how to navigate, there are too many things in YouTube, definitely come and listen to a dance dialogue, participate. You'll have the ability to actually ask questions to artists from all over the world and, get their 2 cents on certain issues.
Okay. Shehzeen, I'm going to ask you one last question before we get into that interactive rhythm workshop that
Okay.
Shehzeen has promised to do for everyone who's tuned in very kindly. So just as we're sort of wrapping this conversation up, um, I just want to get into like a little bit of the highs and lows of this career. And since you've kept the conversation so real and authentic, just maintaining that same strain, what have been the highs and lows, and what are some of the things you would caution people in favor of or against choosing this career, just since you've been through the whole journey?
Sure. There's lots of highs. Performance and teaching for me has, at the end of a class, at the end of a show, I'm in a different plane that I can't even describe in words. It's not enough. But there are definite moments of like, am I doing the right thing? Oh my God, did I give up something? I didn't, because I literally tried everything before I gave it up. But
Sure.
definitely, there are moments, there are frustrations, and especially in Spain, like I've been through so many crazy experiences. Even just getting back from Spain, I was at a from Calagora in Feb. I left for a festival in Jerez in later that same month, and I still haven't been home. I kind of escaped in this pandemic, and in the middle of a show, I lost so many gigs. There's always been stuff, and there's always going to be ups and downs that you can't anticipate. I feel like adapting gracefully and just kind of centering is the best thing that you can do. You have so much going for you. I feel anybody would. And I feel like having some gratitude at the end of the day and acknowledging, many times I feel like, oh, I haven't done anything, like I've always danced, so what's different? But I feel sometimes it's nice to take a step back and, look at the journey and be grateful for what's come your way. And, kind of keep your head down, stay humble, and keep going, because there is a lot of passion, there's a lot of fulfillment. And I feel like at the end of the day, I think we're all on some level looking for that. And if you have been fortunate enough to find it early in life, I think taking a moment to acknowledge that is pretty great. For me, it's always been like, I need to get up in the morning super excited about what I'm going to do. And if I'm not, that means I'm not doing the right thing. So,
okay. So you're saying the sort of the takeaways, like sort of like there are lots of highs and lows. You've had your moments of lows, you've had your moments of doubt and suspicion.
Yes, absolutely.
But you sort of experimented with a lot of things, you experienced a lot of things, and then picked dance. So in that sense, there's absolutely no regret, because you literally actually went out and scoped out many careers before you picked this one. Okay, great. Thank you. That was a great closing note. And let's jump into the workshop. So you're going to lead,
okay,
and the rest of us are going to follow.
Okay, great. How much time do we have?
I'll tell you when Instagram gives me that 2 minutes heads up, but I think we have a good 7 minutes.
Great, perfect. So I'm going to teach you guys. I found many questions have come from my students, so you probably already know this, but for somebody who's never ever done flamenco or interacted with flamenco, we have tals. They're over 55 in general, and some are based on 4s, 8s, 6s, 12. That's pretty much our range. So let's begin at 4s. That's the easiest door to open into flamenco rhythm. It's also the same as our very own teen tal. That, if you're into Indian classical music, that's pretty much the same thing. We count in 4 and we accent 1, and we don't accent 2 and 3 and 4. So let's begin.
Is it the 16 beats? Is that
no, we don't think of it as 16. We count it as 4, and the 4 bar continues. You could do 4/4 and think of it as 16 and come back to the cycle. That'll be fine as well. It all lines up. Okay, so let's. If you are watching this and you'd like to try it properly, I'd invite you to stand up. Okay, so shake it out, stand up, and if you can, knock your weight to one leg. If you're righty, put your weight all on your left foot, so that you have your right foot free. So you can tap or stamp your right foot to mark the accent. So on 1, you can stamp or tap, and 2, 3, and 4, you clap. And we clap like this, like we have something that we're hiding inside our hands. We kind of cup it, and it gives a very soft, suave sound. And clapping tal is called palmas because it comes from palm or palm percussion. Okay, so it's just a fancy Spanish word for clapping the rhythm. So let's try 5, 6, 7, go, stamp, clap, clap, clap. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our bass rhythm. And we have another variant that sounds like this. 1 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. Pa, pa, pam, pa. Pa, pa, pam, pa. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. Pa, pa, pam, pa. Pretty much it.
Okay.
And that's one bass and one variant. There are thousands of permutation combinations. If you like, I can play something slightly more complex right now. So we have two ways of clapping tal. One is a soft, suave way, which is palmas sorda. Sorda means someone deaf. So this is how someone deaf would kind of hear somebody clapping.
Okay.
And this is palmas claras, which has a much sharper, clear sound that is more demanding. So I'm going to play, I'll start at the bass, which you've just learned. I'll go into the variation you've learned, and then I will take it up a notch from there. Okay, so 1, 2, 4. Uno. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's pretty much a small, tiny piece of rhythm or tukra. There's the sky's the limit in terms of permutation combination as long as we respect the bar 4. And that's pretty much it, your first introduction to flamenco rhythm. If you are keen to learn with me, definitely go to my Instagram profile. We have new courses in August if you'd like to learn more rhythms.
And you're teaching classes for absolute beginners as well?
Absolute beginners, yes. Every month there will be courses for absolute beginners, not only in dance, but in singing and rhythm as well. That's the major focus. We want as many people to be exposed, so beginners are very much welcome. That's kind of what I live for, introducing.
I have a quick question here from Javed Sanadi, who's a celebrity choreographer himself.
Sure.
He's a brilliant dancer. He's asking, are you shuffling or stamping?
Stamping. So you can even tap your foot, but ideally you want to stamp. That's the correct technique. And a stamp is called golpe in Spanish, which comes from actually hammering, golpear, which means actually hammering a nail in. So that's the actual, the intention of our footwork once we wear shoes and perform. So it's a stamp.
Okay, great. All right, Shehzeen, you've been absolutely wonderful. Session
Thank
has
you so
been
much.
educational, inspirational, and of course, lots of rhythm and music in your session as always. Cannot wait to come back to one of your performances. So, guys, please tune into Shehzeen's Instagram channel, and she posts a lot of her classes, her events, lots and lots of content over there. And stay tuned. And Shehzeen, thank you so much for doing this. Look
My
forward to
pleasure.
seeing you very
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you for having
Okay,
me.
thank you.
Pleasure. Look forward. See you.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao. Okay, guys, as Shehzeen is ending the session, just a quick thank you to everyone for tuning in. This was a super fun session. Got to learn a ton from her today. I will always ask you guys, please let me know if there's any experts or certain sectors that you want to learn more about. Yeah, she is very humble. I know, Karthik. She's actually a very good friend of mine, and she's also performed at a couple of events that I've organized and stuff. So she's really superb to just be around. But thank you guys for joining. In line with the career-related show, The House of Experts, we've started hosting career-related workshops for people. So if you're interested in figuring out how to do a goal-setting workshop, I am personally conducting these workshops. So coming Saturday, we'll be doing one only for college students, and the following Saturday, doing one for young professionals. It's just a 90-minute workshop. So if anyone's interested, do reach out to us at Reachivy. And as always, direct message us, let us know about any careers you want to learn more about, and if we can be of any help whatsoever. So thank you guys for watching, and thank you to all the musicians and dancers, Javed, Karthik, and everyone else who joined the session. Thank you, Pranati, for your support as always. Amazing team, Abel, Stella, Uf Mirchi, Naam to Suna Hi Nahi Hoga. Thanks all for making the show possible one more time. All right, guys, signing off. Thank you.